Apple didn't become the world's most successful technology retailer simply because it builds great products. It became one by borrowing the playbook of luxury hospitality, a playbook that existed long before the first Macintosh, or even the first computer. Imagine checking into a five-star hotel. The doors open effortlessly, the lighting is warm, the architecture is breathtaking. No one rushes toward you, no one tries to sell you anything. Instead, everything feels calm, intentional, almost effortless. Now picture walking into an Apple store, the towering glass facade, the natural stone, the oversized wooden tables, the quiet confidence of the staff, the absence of clutter. It doesn't feel like an electronics store. It feels like somewhere you're meant to stay. That feeling wasn't an accident. It was designed. For generations, luxury hotels, luxury brands, and architects have all studied the same question. How do you make someone feel extraordinary before they ever buy anything? Apple studied that same question. It didn't just redesign the computer, it redesigned the experience of buying one. And once you see it, you'll realize Apple has more in common with a five-star hotel than a traditional electronics store. In 2001, Apple did something almost every retail expert believed would fail. It opened its own stores. At the time, the decision made little sense. Apple products were already sold through established retailers. Why take on the enormous expense of building stores from scratch? Because Apple wasn't trying to create a better electronics store, it was trying to create a different kind of experience. Ron Johnson, the executive hired to build Apple's retail division, later explained that customers could already buy Apple products elsewhere. What they couldn't get was Apple. That became the mission. Not simply to sell technology, but to build a place worth visiting. Luxury begins long before the purchase. Architects call it the arrival sequence, the carefully orchestrated transition from the outside world into another environment. Every material, every sound, every sightline, every step. Before you've touched a product, before you've spoken to an employee, your opinion is already forming. Luxury has understood something for centuries. The experience begins before the transaction. Apple embraced that philosophy. Towering sheets of structural glass, natural limestone, warm oak tables, uninterrupted sightlines, no flashing promotions, no cluttered windows, no stacks of discounted inventory. The building earns trust. Apple later partnered with Foster and Partners, one of the world's most celebrated architecture firms, not retail architects. Architects known for museums, airports, headquarters, and civic landmarks. Apple wasn't building stores, it was building destinations. Its Fifth Avenue glass cube became one of the most recognizable retail entrances on Earth. Its Singapore store appears to float on water. Its Milan flagship transformed an entire public square into the entrance itself. People visit these places without buying anything. Some simply come to photograph them. Architecture became advertising because luxury understands another principle. Confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. When Ron Johnson designed Apple's retail strategy, he eliminated sales commissions, a radical decision. Why remove one of the strongest incentives to sell? Because commissions change behavior. Instead of solving problems, employees begin chasing transactions. Instead, Apple borrowed another hospitality principle. Service comes before sales. Employees were taught to listen before recommending, to acknowledge concerns before offering solutions, to replace negative language with reassuring language. Even the name reflects the philosophy, not technical support, not customer service. The Genius Bar, a title that transforms a repair counter into something that feels remarkably similar to a concierge desk. Luxury doesn't just solve problems, It removes anxiety. Then Apple applied the same thinking to something almost nobody expected: the box. Luxury has always understood that ownership begins with ceremony: a Cartier watch, a Hermes scarf, a Tiffany necklace. The object matters, but so does the ritual surrounding it. Apple approached packaging the same way, not as protection, as presentation. The weight, the paper, the precision, the carefully layered reveal. Opening the box becomes part of the product itself. It's why millions of people willingly film themselves opening Apple products. The experience is worth sharing because luxury transforms ordinary moments into memorable rituals. Finally, there's the ecosystem on the surface. It looks like vertical integration: hardware, software, services, accessories, cloud, stores, support. But underneath, it's something older. Luxury has always protected consistency. Every interaction should feel unmistakably familiar. Every touch point should speak the same language. Apple didn't control the experience because it could. It controlled the experience because consistency is part of the product. And that's the real story. Apple didn't borrow one luxury strategy. It borrowed an entire philosophy, a philosophy built on a handful of remarkably simple ideas. The experience begins before the purchase. Confidence doesn't need to announce itself. Luxury edits instead of overwhelms. Service comes before sales. Ritual creates value. Consistency builds trust. Apple didn't invent any of those ideas. Architects did, hoteliers did, luxury houses did. Apple simply recognized that they could apply them to technology. It didn't just change how computers were sold. It changed what people expect buying anything to feel like. And once you recognize those patterns, you'll begin seeing them everywhere.